Welcome to The Point, brought to you by the Young Turks. I'm John Fugelsang, your guest host for the episode, and I'm very thrilled about the lineup and the topics we have for today. But first, explain something to me. How is it that during the Vietnam War, Mitt Romney was only into missionary? As governor of Massachusetts, he enjoyed multiple positions. On Wall Street, he's into the group thing, but with absolutely no protection. For the Olympics, he got on his knees in front of D.C. and they paid him for it. His church does not like women on top. You don't want to know how this guy does doggy style on road trips. And he broke up with Bain, but was still able to stay friends with benefits. And yet, when it comes to something as vanilla as his tax records, the guy just won't ever put out. That's because, Mitt, you can't stand up for Main Street when you're on all fours for Wall Street. Let's do a show. We have three great points this week. The first is from the Majority Report's Sam Seder, one of my favorite voices in progressive media, who has this to say to regulators at the Food and Drug Administration: you're doing it all wrong. We'll also have a point featuring Smashing Pumpkins frontman Billy Corgan about the future of the record industry, which I'm very thrilled to talk about. And our third point, we're going to talk about a homeowner in Great Britain who got in a bit of trouble for the way he publicly shaved his bush. I didn't write that. But first, joining me today on the panel, I'm very pleased to welcome Douglas Caballero, is a former host and producer of Current TV's music programming and will soon be hosting and producing Music and Politics, a new show being developed by the folks right here at the Young Turks Network. Welcome, Douglas.
Thank you.
Jackie Koppel is an actress and comedian whose character, dedicated Tea Partier Susie Sampson, makes regular contributions to the Huffington Post, where I'm sure she's very well compensated. Yes. And Lauren Windsor, I'm thrilled to welcome to the show, an independent journalist who blogs under the name Lady Libertine. If you haven't read her stuff, check it out. Who proudly describes herself as an uncivil libertarian. Welcome. I'm always thrilled to be the fourth smartest person, and today I'm thrilled to be by far the least attractive. I feel like I'm the before picture in a gym ad, so thank you. All right, let's take a look at our first point for the week. You don't mention it. This comes from our friend Sam Seder. Take a look.
Hi, I'm Sam Seder of the Majority Report at majority.fm, and my point is that the libertarian and conservative response to the problem of corrupt government regulatory agencies is completely backwards. They love to hear a story like the recent one about the FDA spying on whistleblowers, because for them, it's just another reason why government is bad and agencies should be eliminated. But the reason why FDA scientists were being spied on by agency managers is because the scientists objected to the industry pressure and the non-science-based approval of unsafe medical testing devices. And so these government scientists fought back. Now, when a government agency is dysfunctional because it's been stacked with industry cronies, the answer isn't that we need less or smaller or weaker government. The answer is that we need government with more integrity and with better regulations to make sure that it's protecting the interests of consumers and workers instead of the corporations that it's supposed to be regulating. So understand that when government agencies become corrupt, it's the corporations that are corrupting them. Government must curb corporate pursuit of profit when that pursuit is done at the expense of our health and safety. And the idea that shrinking the regulatory authority of these agencies and leaving corporations without anything to corrupt is somehow the answer is like saying that the best way to get rid of cancer is to kill the patient. It completely misses the point.
Thank you, Sam. Work on your energy. No, I love him, and it's brilliant, and this is one of the smartest guys in media for my money. So, Lauren, I want to start with you. Do you agree with Sam that the proper response to something like this scandal and others involving corrupt regulatory agencies is more regulation instead of less?
I don't think he's necessarily saying that it's more regulation. He's saying that it's better regulation and not less.
Yeah.
So, not being an expert on the intricacies of FDA regulation, the quality of their regulations, I can't speak to. What I would say is that this is inherent in the system in all these different agencies. When you look at Fast and Furious with the ATF, these.
Well, that's a little bit different.
Well, if you read the Fortune article that came out.
Indeed, I did. I've interviewed her a few times.
If you look at what you see across these agencies is dramatic cuts to the agency. So you don't have the manpower to investigate to the level that you should be. These people the agencies are understaffed, the people are overworked, and then, it takes such a huge hurdle to climb over in the first place to ever prosecute them, because the DOJ wants, the Department of Justice wants, an ironclad case.
Yeah.
So I would say that we should examine the funding levels and the regulations that are there, make sure they're common sense. If they're not good regulations, they need to be thrown out. We need to have better ones. I don't necessarily think that it needs to be more regulation. I think it does need to be better, and I think that we need to have the enforcement power, the teeth, because so many of these agencies don't actually have the teeth to make it stick.
Well, and that's a good point. And one thing that, this makes me think about is when we say government, we're really saying we the people.
Right.
And when we the people send these people to D.C. to represent us, we expect them to take care of us. And something Sam said in the piece really resonated, that the government can curb corporate pursuit of profit, or should the government curb corporate pursuit of profit if it's at the expense of our health and safety? I think most people, conservative or liberal, would say yes.
Right.
Do y'all agree? Is it ever okay to curb, I can't believe I'm asking this stupid question, but to curb the pursuit
you set
of...
it up.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, well,
A little
no,
bit.
because I'm firmly on the side of you, smarter regulation. And regulation has somehow become a dirty word. I mean, when regulation for pollution means we want to have less arsenic in the water, less poisons and carcinogens in the air we breathe, and yet somehow the anti-pollution movement, the word regulation has been used to make that sound bad. So, but if, as Sam said, that it's inherently corrupt, and that government as a fallible agency is inherently prone to corruption, could more regulation ever even help?
But is it more? I mean, you mentioned quality, and that's what I think. And it should, that it's really more about the quality of it. And also, for me, when I was watching the video, I was wondering, where is the implied firewall between these government agencies and the influence of the corporations? I mean, they've all been compromised. We've seen all of these things go down over in my lifetime, and this is just the latest right now. Isn't there supposed to be one with these organizations like the USDA and the FDA and so on?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and
There's
again,
supposed to be one.
Well, there's supposed to be one, but they're inherently corrupted. Look at the FDA. I mean, look at our food pyramid. I personally think the food pyramid should be pear-shaped. This is America.
Yeah. Just all corn all day.
Well, yeah, and the Egyptian pyramids were built by slaves. Our food pyramid was built by lobbyists. And so it speaks to the issue of how can we even trust regulation if the government itself is going to be corrupted by these profit-driven people who don't care about our own health and safety.
Well,
Please, Jackie.
I would just say, I agree. I mean, I think we all tend to be in agreement on this, right? But I would say, where does it stop, right? Well, if the government's not going to protect us, will regulations protect us? I think it's, to a certain degree, stepping back. I agree you don't need more regulation necessarily. So to all of those out there who think we liberals are all about more regulation, I don't think that's the case. I do think it's better regulation. But maybe it is changing of the guard and getting in, obviously, folks who are not quite so swayed, if you will.
So as soon as we get rid of the two-party system, we can get to work on this, I guess.
Well, there's a huge movement afoot to change this. I mean, getting the corporate money out of politics, launching a constitutional convention. These are things that we should be able to tackle as a nation. But when you have politicians that are beholden to corporate masters in order to get into elected office, then of course you're going to see outcomes like that. What do you expect? They're incented to work for corporations because they're the ones that pick up the tab.
I think that, yes. I think, though, that we have to figure out a way to, money is not leaving the political arena. Obviously, we have Citizens United now. It's a free-for-all, right? Like, we're not going away from it. So it's figuring out how we can, and I don't have the answer, I can't claim to, but how do we work in the boundaries of what we do have, because money's everywhere, and it's definitely
Well, also,
not going
it's
away.
just the gullibility of the American public. I'm pretty convinced that you could sell raw goat phlegm at Whole Foods if you added the words "with antioxidants."
I'm sure you could.
USDA organic.
Yeah, USDA organic goat phlegm with antioxidants and electrolytes.
My roommate, in fact, would buy it.
Exactly. And, I mean, we are a gullible species. And people, Karl Marx said religion is the opium of the people. This guy couldn't imagine 500 channels and porn on demand. We're not paying attention. The reason the regulation sucks is because we're not holding our own elected officials' feet to the fire, and we've allowed it to get this sloppy, and that's why we have corn or mutated corn in everything we eat. So is the solution potentially public financing of elections after Superman comes and gets rid of Citizens United?
I think that's the direction we have to go. I think that that's the root of all governmental evil really right now, is that it's the corporate money, because you can't tackle any other issue because each issue is so connected to an industry. Anything with the environment, anything with food, anything with the finance industry. I mean, look at what happened to finance. They tried to push through financial reform when you would think that everyone could agree that we needed financial reform. And does it have teeth? Frank Dodd doesn't really have teeth. I mean,
no, I like you to call it Frank Dodd, though. Well, yeah, it's true, and I wouldn't even consider it financial reform. I'd say it's improvement. Like the healthcare bill isn't really reform; it's improvement. And the case of Dodd-Frank, that's an area where you're trying to solve a shark problem by adding more lifeguards.
Well, why haven't we reinstated Glass-Steagall? Why aren't we regulating derivatives? Why aren't we doing it? Because the people in charge profit off the regulations, the system. It's an incumbency of wealth, and they're protecting their own. They profit off of it wildly. Look at LIBOR.
Yeah, and again, this is the stuff Occupy Wall Street talked about. Bring back Glass-Steagall, put some cuffs on someone, get rid of derivatives. I mean, everyone watching this, by the way, needs to rent Michael Moore's Capitalism, a Love Story, needs to rent
Inside Job.
Inside Job, which won the Oscar for documentary. They will explain to you derivatives. It's so disgusting. Bill Clinton, you got to answer for that. But here's the thing. One of the things I really enjoyed watching in the GOP presidential debates over the past year was seeing how badly these candidates want to get rid of any kind of regulation. And Ron Paul, who is a great, sane, wonderful guy half the time. I mean, personally, I like Ron Paul. I'd vote for him to be mayor of Deadwood in a second. But
he's on his way.
Yeah, and a lawless Old West cattle baron, he gets my vote. But Ron Paul's sane half is a great guy. Then you have the other libertarian half of Ron Paul that wants to get rid of Medicare and replace it with transitional programs, something vague he said, that wants to get rid of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which to me is one of the greatest things that's happened by government in my lifetime, and it makes me proud to be an American. And when we look at people like Rick Perry trying to rattle off the agencies he would get rid of.
I was just about to bring that up.
Exactly, and I can't remember the last one. But if their response is, the libertarian response is always, let's scale down the agencies. Government's the bad guy. We can always trust the private sector. When have management ever screwed over labor in history? Which is the inherent flaw with the libertarian argument.
It's not just.
What would it result in? What if we had the libertarian ideal and we were that much closer to Somalia and there was less regulation over what goes into the food we eat and the air we breathe and the water we drink? What would happen if this came to pass?
We live in utopia.
Yeah,
That's what
with cholera.
Well, you win some, you lose some.
I guess you're right. But I mean, is this a fear? Do we have to worry about, even more crap in our bodies? Because
yes.
The
answer is yes.
And this is the dark side of capitalism. This is when the aristocracy can own the politicians and remove any of these unpleasant regulations that cut into their profits, even though it might save a few 100,000 lives. Am I exaggerating at all?
Well, it's the corporate oligarchy. I mean, plutocracy. This is it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we all kind of agree, and we're all coming at it from similar perspectives. But what I say, and I say this a lot of times often to libertarians as well, which is, so we know the problem, or oftentimes a utopic vision, if you will, is brought up. What do we actually do about the problem at hand? Right? What do we, as opposed to sitting here and saying, well, this is the problem. Money isn't leaving anytime soon, unfortunately. Obviously, I would love it if that was the case, but how do we make steps forward?
But there are movements, and
yes, there are,
that are afoot right now. United Republic being one, Move to Amend being another. I work with Occupy, so I live stream, I write blogs, I create graphics and videos.
On the grassroots level, it's there.
There's a lot of
on the institutionalized level. The best we seem to be able to hope for is bureaucrats to police the bureaucrats. Can we do better?
I think we could absolutely do better, but I think it's a question of, I don't know, do you hold someone's moral feet to the fire? Does that help?
Yes, I think so completely. I think Democrats put children's faces up there.
It was rhetorical.
Well, I mean, hey, here's thalidomide babies. Remember this? Let's thank God for deregulation.
Well, here's the thing is I think that we have to stop being so fatalistic about it. It's in quitting before we even begin. And, when you have it simmering at the grassroots level, if you can get the right people in the media talking about it and make it known to the general population that this is something that we agree on. I mean, the Tea Party agrees on these financial reforms, like getting money
they
out of
do.
politics. And so you've got to
But
find
that's one of the failures of Occupy
common
Wall
ground.
Street. I think one of the failures of Occupy Wall Street was not being able to convince conservative Americans that Occupy speaks for their interests way more than John Boehner and Fox News. But of course, that's because well, we could talk about Occupy Wall Street all day, and I know we don't have time. We're going to move on to some slightly sexier topics. Before we go to break, I do want to say to all the
Corn
angry Ron
syrup.
Paul fans right now who are angrily commenting on this, I love Ron Paul. He's fearless on the drug war, fearless on the Iraq war. I think he's right to audit the Fed, but I'm sorry, the other stuff is a bit screwy. And when it comes to the other stuff, Ron Paul is one Gotham City acid spill away from being Harvey Dent. We'll be right back. Give us your comments. We'll be right back with The Point. Welcome back to The Point. Our next point features a very special commentary from my old pal Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins. Take a look.
No, I believe the album is dead, absolutely, which sounds counterintuitive to the message. We still think it's an effective form of communication. In our case, it's helping change the perception of the band's artistic legacy. No, there's no way the album's ever going to reclaim its place in the culture. Look at where we are right now with technology. Imagine where it's going to be in 5 years. I mean, you're getting to the point where you can Skype with somebody on your phone. I mean, can you imagine? We're going to have such a different set of relationships with one another. The idea that we're going to sit somewhere for 60 minutes and listen to a record is like, forget about it. Now maybe we'll do it if it has a visual component, but that's very hard to manifest, resource-wise. And even then, I don't know, if you had a 60-minute album with video, would you watch it all the way through more than once? I really doubt it. I'm an artist who obviously hasn't been squarely focused on selling records, or I would have kept the same music. I would have been a little easier to get along with. But that being said, rock and roll needs to be effective. And when it stops being effective, an artist like ourselves needs to figure out new ways to break down the barriers.
Douglas, I want to go to you on this. You're the music guy here, and I was in a past life. Is Billy right? Is the album really dead, or is it just seen that way and it's waiting for another artist to redefine the form?
Let me just point out that I am so impressed that Mr. Corgan was so polite in that video. He's rarely that nice to people.
Every time I ever met him when I was a VJ for all those years at VH1, he was always a real prince, really sweet guy.
Was he?
Every
Okay,
time.
I've seen him at concerts where the crowd has flicked him off. They have paid hard-earned money to see him, and he gave them the bird, and they gave him the bird.
Wow.
He's a smart guy, and he's super talented.
I never
Yeah.
saw that, but every time I met the
Yeah.
guy, he was a gent.
Well, there you go.
So, but here's
Yes,
the thing:
to his point,
is he
he's-
right that the album
He
is dead?
He is absolutely right. If you think otherwise, you can go have fun with your Walkman and your 8-track. It is absolutely dead. It's a
I think
product.
otherwise. I'm going to challenge you, but go ahead.
He had a point about making art pieces out of it, and I completely respect that, and people will continue to do that, and occasionally things will pop up where it really the wall might happen again, something like that might happen again. But
Yeah.
in a way, this actually empowers artists. They're not focused on creating a 60-minute, like he said, piece of work that's meant to be cohesive and coherent. I mean, we should backtrack to understand why the album exists in the first place. You know the reason why the album exists.
When it was an LP for long play?
Yeah, long play. The reason why it exists is because it gave the record labels an opportunity to sell something more expensive to the consumer. I mean, the artists back in the days, and for example in the 50s and early 60s, were selling singles. 45s. My parents bought them. And then I remember I had my mother's first copy of the Beatles LP. It was a compilation of their singles called Meet the Beatles.
Yeah.
And that was when the industry said, "Oh my God, we can charge these kids that much more for vinyl plastic." And so that's how that was born.
But that was cobbled together.
It was cobbled together.
That's before
and
Sgt. Pepper and the album as a concept, as
sure,
as an
but
art
commerce,
form.
in a weird way, created that piece of art rather than the other way around.
Absolutely, but I think I agree with Tom York of Radiohead. Even when he said the CD will never die, because people will always want to have something they could hold in their hand. Not just old
That's
rock
like the
and roll
book.
fans.
Right? We can
Who-
get into
exactly.
a conversation about the book
People,
versus Kindle.
let's define who those people might
Well,
be.
look, there's people making a living off of vinyl now, okay? Like, vinyl was dead. It's like in cinema. They said the Western was dead for years. The musical was dead for years. And when someone can say no, and it's like in comedy, airport material. No, you get a new spin on it. You do something new with it. They said the Western was dead. Clint Eastwood won Best Picture for Unforgiven. The musical's dead. Chicago wins Best Picture. We hear this all the time.
That's a little different, though.
in
You're
art.
talking about genres rather than...
I am talking about genres, sure, but I do think that when an artist has and let's be honest, the album as an art form was anemic for a long time. We've gone a couple of decades with albums that have 2 singles and 8
Horrible.
tracks of filler.
Yeah,
So
horrible.
are we really moving back to the 50s where it's going to be a single-based culture and your artistic statement as a musician is going to be, what can I pack into 3 minutes?
I think I don't necessarily think so, but I think to a certain degree it is, right? I go on iTunes. The reality is I don't usually buy the album. I buy the single or like 2 songs that I like. Maybe that means I'm violating my loyalty to the band. Sorry, Billy Corgan, but
not at all.
but you know, I mean, at the end of the day, like I pick the songs I like. I mean, we're a choice society, right? That's where we're
That's what
going.
the market demands.
Yeah.
And you're in good company. I mean, the future of America and the world, the future consumers of the world, that is the only way they understand how to buy music or
John,
listen
you
to
are not
music.
the future. I hate to,
no.
break it to you.
Listen, no. I do think we're moving back to a single culture. I do think, though, you will see artists trying to make a statement. You'll see people like Springsteen. You'll see people like McCartney who will have concept albums. Radiohead's still going to make great
Jack
albums.
White does.
Jack
It's a
White is still
great-
going to make
it's a
great
great
albums as
claim.
well.
I mean,
But I'm glad you mentioned Jack White because
Third Main Records. I mean, here's the thing: you're going to have like an artisanal culture that likes the crafted, handcrafted sort of small batch, like things that you apply to maybe like craft beer, cocktails. Everything's cyclical. You have this huge craft cocktail culture. Maybe you thought the mule was dead. It's back. People drink it.
Moscow.
see what you're right.
Also known as
Only
Moscow
if it's in a
Mule.
copper mug, yeah.
And
Mule,
generally,
the
and
Moscow
I
Mule.
do agree with you.
Oprah
I do
loves
agree
herself
with
on
Douglas
Moscow
in
Mule.
theory that the album's dead, but I do think we will see people still come out and release
Sure,
great
right.
albums. But I'm glad you mentioned Jack White because in the era of downloadable music, we were talking about this earlier. Jack White is now a member of 312 different bands.
It's
I don't know if
true.
you know that, but he's
It's
touring.
absolutely
He's
true.
in
Might be
312
now.
different bands.
Wait, now 314.
Okay, right. Sorry. And the reality, Wanda Jackson has a new album.
Yeah.
out.
Oh, is he he's just traveling.
Well, here's the
Is he like
reality.
the James Franco of the music
Yeah,
industry?
apparently.
Well, a bit more consistent. But here's the reality of the industry now. We're looking at artists who aren't making money off of albums anymore, and it's getting harder for them to make money off of singles anymore now that they're so easily stolen. So artists, for better or worse, have to go back and make their money on the road.
They say that's where all the
again,
money
we're
is
back to the 50s again with this too.
Sure.
So that's why you'll see people like Jack White belonging to 3 or 4 different bands. You'll see, Dave Grohl starts up them Crooked Vultures. We'll see more of these hybrid super bands because artists have to keep touring more and they can't bring out the same combo all the time.
They do, but all the artists you've mentioned so far, Springsteen, McCartney, and so on, these are all legacy artists.
Sure.
Jack White, it was also built by the industry pre-Napster.
He sure was.
He's fortunate, but he's obsessed with old culture and the blues and all of that. So he's just going to be a part of that because he wants to be a part of that. And all of those artists are incredible, but that's the world they know. And if we're talking about the artists of today and the future, these are the people who don't have the advantage of having a major label build them up and turn them into superstars. Radiohead, prime example, In Rainbows. They waited until their record deal was over and they put out the most palatable record they'd put out in years to give the finger to the man because they could. No one else could do that at the time. No one else could put out their album for free. Trent Reznor got screwed when he tried to follow in their footsteps, and he's a huge artist.
It's really true. You could say that Radiohead followed up their most uncommercial album with Hail to the Thief with this most gorgeous thing they'd done in ages, and it was all part of their plan. And
they could only do that because they're legacy artists from basically 2000.
Yeah.
That's the only reason. That's the same. That's the case with all those other artists you mentioned. But with artists that are now coming up, how are they supposed to build their brand? How are they supposed to make a living? I mean, go into a studio and record an album isn't necessarily the best way for them to do that these days.
I agree.
Yeah, but I think it's not necessarily, but I think the next generation, I mean, we're kind of like the young folks, even there are folks who are even younger than us. But it's through social media now, right? Like you put a video up on YouTube and you make money. I mean, hello, we have Justin Bieber because of it. I think you're just going to find new ways. And quite frankly, I don't think the mega artist is necessarily dead either.
And in some ways, the younger artists are now the new young dinosaurs because Lady Gaga has so much pressure on her to have massive album sales to keep this industry limping along.
Yeah.
Now, one of my favorite scenes in a movie is from Hard Day's Night. They felt that George didn't have enough to do in the movie, so they wrote a special scene for George that I think is the greatest scene in the film, where they have George accidentally wander into this room where this foppish middle-aged man is deciding what all the 16-year-olds are going to love in 6 months. Right. He has no idea who this young guy is and just begins quizzing him, and George just hates all the music and hates all the pop stars and these invented plastic people he's pointing out. And he winds up being fascinated at George, and it was really uncommonly political. And it really showed how, what I experienced years later in the MTV generation of a bunch of guys in corner offices trying to figure out what terrifying Negro rapper will horrify parents to sell a lot of records and get the kids to buy our acne medication we advertise. I think it's great to rejoice at the thought of record company scumbags biting the dust. But is it premature? While the art is going to find new ways to get out there and be available to the masses, what does it mean to the record industry? And is the collapse of the record industry a good thing?
I think it might be. I mean, we're an economy of creative destruction, and I think that people holding
very
on.
dramatic of you.
Yeah.
Economy of creative destruction.
Very
That's
Fight
the
Club
Nine Inch
of you.
Nails album,
That's
actually.
it. The man
Very
is coming
Fight Club
after
of you.
all
Let's
of it.
just blow up all the labels.
Well, here's the thing: is that like when the printing press came out, it put an end to scribes handwriting everything.
Yes.
So
Gutenberg really screwed over the quill pen
Yeah,
industry.
man. We
Those
are.
monks.
the democratization of like music publication, like going into the digital form, is a positive thing. I mean, if
Is
you
it democratization, or are they going to find a whole new way to rip
Well,
us off?
No, there's gonna find a whole new way to rip us off.
No,
don't worry.
here's what I'm saying. Like all the money that's in music, like people will always want music. Music will always be there. Someone will have to pay for it because people have to have money to survive to produce it, right? What's happening now is 10 to 20% of an album sales goes to the artist.
Yeah.
10 to 20%.
That's really
So it's the recording industry, the legacy record labels that are the ones that are losing the money.
Is she right about that?
No, I mean, she's absolutely right that they're making the lion's share of the money, and they've screwed over artists for a long time because they became greedy, and that's a big reason why they are in trouble right now, is they've denied technology and they denied change, but they're absolutely necessary for the future, not necessarily in the current incarnation. Maybe not Sony and EMI and Warner Brothers, it might be smaller, different, but they absolutely are necessary. Distribution, marketing, and so on are things that a bedroom artist can't pull off just on YouTube and social media.
The entire industry is not going. I mean, human nature. Get it, guys? Human nature.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, I've been dying to throw that one out there.
You're the funny one on
Come
the panel. I forgot.
No, but it is. I mean, human nature is we're going to want what kind of the other person has, and I don't think that the record industry or the mega companies are dying or anytime soon. I think they are going to have to change, and I think technology has proven that if they don't change, they will maybe meet their maker.
Then let me shift gears really quickly. And by the way, Human Nature is a band too bush for me. This year, Bruce Springsteen put out arguably his most political album ever, and I would say
they say that every year, John.
Well, no, this one was real. I mean, Magic was pretty political, but this one's a really This one's a real political record.
I went to
also
the
think it's
concert, and it was very political.
I love the new band, and I think it's arguably his best album in many, many years.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Everybody who cares about politics or good music should pick up Wrecking Ball. But when we talk about artists who are political, when we talk about Dixie Chicks or Springsteen or even Lady
Tom
Gaga
Morello.
or Tom Morello, of course.
Kanye.
Or Kanye, well, Kanye half the time.
Doesn't like
Kanye
black
half the
people.
time. He's sort of the
Right.
Ron Paul of hip hop. But here's the thing: when these artists make these political statements, we can admire them. I trust artists on politics, going back to The Fool and King Lear. Do they have any real impact on the debate?
Are you kidding me? I'm
No, I'm not. I'm serious.
Politics show here at the Young Turks, and that is the concept is predicated on the fact that yes, the answer is yes to that. They absolutely
Do they preach to their own choir, or do they have any real impact?
They do absolutely have an impact. Unfortunately, I think today, the big emphasis for young, when it comes to music is to get people just to vote, rather than to give them an agenda. And in one of the reasons why 60s music was so important and was so moving is because it had an agenda. There is no there's no media that is hotter than music. There's not one thing I can think of that you want to listen to over and over or consume and perceive over and over and over again that, other than like music. The only thing I can think
FDA
of.
regulations.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
saying.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Just saying.
that's true. There are some things you might want to
Come on
snort
now.
and eat. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But I mean, the only thing I can think of, it's a distant second, is the sense of, the sense of smell. Reminds you of something. Like a song reminds you of the first kiss you had, or
Your sense memory you're talking
Yeah,
about.
exactly. But unfortunately, right now the emphasis is on technology. How can we share, the concert we're at? How can we talk about the music that we're listening to rather than like just enjoying it?
Yeah. Well,
And my point is, sorry, I
Please.
went off. I'm coming back.
I like
going around
that.
the
This
corner,
is
going
okay.
around the block to
We
get
waited
across
for
the
you.
street.
Come on back.
Is that those artists are absolutely important, and there needs to be more of a refocus on what is their message. And a lot of artists have a message, like you said. It's not just old fogies like the boss. It's a lot of young artists, and and the message needs to be, rather than like how much money am I making, it needs to, because no one's making money, and especially the new artists, it needs to be about like, what they believe in, what do they care about.
Okay, but
and we need to celebrate them.
I'm not going to deny that Lady Gaga's caused there to be less homophobia in America. Okay, there's a lot of kids who stopped hating their gay classmates because they listened to Gaga. Crosby, Stills, and Nash, they may have helped end the Vietnam War. Dylan's early stuff when he wasn't afraid to be political turned a lot of people on. Paul McCartney got banned on the BBC for writing a song with Wings called Give Ireland Back to the Irish. But at some level, the argument always levied against them is, well, shut up and sing, which you don't hear them telling NASCAR drivers or athletes to shut up or country stars to shut up about their politics. But are they just preaching to the converted? They'll make their fans happy with echoing their own political statements and articulating it in a new way. But has anyone ever changed their vote based on something a rock star said?
I don't think, though, that that's necessarily the outcome that needs to be had. I mean, generating a debate about it, I think, is good enough of an outcome.
Yeah.
Even if you're not swaying anybody, just having it in the public sphere, because people aren't talking about politics as much as they should be. Which is why Occupy was so great, was because it thrust it into, like, right in front of people and, like, forced them to talk about it. And the same thing with the Tea Party movement as well. And we've got to reinvigorate public discourse about politics.
Yeah, I agree.
I
So-
agree. No, that's absolutely the case. I think that's what musicians provide, is that they provide context, and they provide that they can be a mirror or a window into what's happening.
That's the artist's responsibility.
It gets you involved in that way. Kanye West was a perfect example, going down to Occupy Wall Street, gold chains, gold teeth, and he didn't talk. And Russell Simmons had to speak for him. None of that was appropriate on some level, but on another level, I paid attention.
Yeah.
I was more interested in what was happening down there.
Yep.
I think it's a conversation starter more than maybe a vote changer.
They mold
But
the
it's
conversation.
over time.
They're not necessarily going to change the vote, but they might get you to pay attention.
I certainly agree, and there's no greater proof of that than Bruce Springsteen and Chris Christie, who is the greatest Bruce Springsteen fan to ever ignore every Bruce Springsteen lyric, and he ain't no old fogey. The guy rocks like a motherfucker.
I was.
We want to know what y'all think. Please comment below and write angry stuff too if you need to do that. We'll be right back with our next point right after this. For our final point, we go to our friends in the merry old UK to hopefully answer the question of what exactly a bird in the bush is worth.
Richard Jackson can't believe his carefully trimmed bushes could land him in trouble. Someone has complained to the council, and the police have called to have a word with him. We aren't going to show the actual piece of topiary in case it causes offence, but it could be described as a rude finger gesture.
Well, I'm very sorry if I've upset anybody. I wouldn't want to upset anybody, but it wasn't done for that. It was done in a very light-hearted way.
I think it's brilliant, and it's really good to do something like this freehand and to shape it. It's been there. We've had it 8 years, and for somebody, to think it's offensive is just silly, really.
Mr. Jackson has no plans to cut down the offending topiary, but just in case he is made to, there's already a Save the Bush campaign underway.
Are we rolling tape on this?
There was the leader of the free world. Some of y'all voted for twice doing the same thing. Well, we showed the actual offending bush with the gesture because half of you are going to go flip over and watch midget gangbang porn anyway. You're not going to be offended by that. So, Jackie, I know you've been dying to talk about this. I want to give you the first question.
Oh, please, bring on the bush.
Well, again, we're not talking about America, so the First Amendment doesn't apply, believe it or not. But is it right for the authorities to put the screws to this homeowner on his own private property with his own expression to take down his topiary work?
I don't think it's right. I think you have to have a sense of humor. I think later on in the clip, or even, he's had it up for like 8 years or something like that, and it only now became offensive. I don't know. To someone I say, to whoever it was who was offended, I say, well, maybe you need to leave your basement and not be so
there are those who would say it's an ugly, hostile gesture. What if he had done, a giant penis or 2 giant penises or 3 men having graphic sex out of his bushes?
He'd be a great topiary artist.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more, and David Geffen would hire him to do the yards right now.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
my point is, where would you draw the line? What if he had a swastika shrubbery?
I think
and this isn't? What if he had a swastika
shrubbery? You said it just
shrubbery?
now with love, so
Well, indeed.
Now,
my point is community standards, right?
Yeah.
Let's say if it is ugly, let's say he carved out something vulgar about your religion. I mean, at what point do people in the community have a right to say, I want to try to use whatever civic power I have to make him take this upsetting image off his lawn? Do they ever have a right to try?
Yeah,
Of course,
absolutely.
yeah.
Homeowners, I don't know how it works in the UK actually. First of all, let me say, that looked like a sketch from the old Dave Chappelle variety show. I thought it was a joke for a second.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. In America, they have homeowners associations. You're not allowed to park your boat in your front yard and things like that. So, I mean, I would, although I'm confused as to why it's been up for so long.
Right.
But yeah, they absolutely have the right.
So who gets to
Anything.
decide if something's obscene? In your yard. Like, for example, a few blocks from here in central LA, there's some fellow who owns a house near Larchmont that is just statues of naked men.
I have seen.
You know the one I mean?
I do know the
And
very-
he's got like a dozen Davids just
Yes.
standing
Yes.
there, flopping in the breeze, except they're marble and
They're
don't
marble,
flop.
they don't
Now it's reasonable to imagine that someone would find this display of marbleized genitalia offensive after a while. At what point in a free society based on liberty with the First Amendment says, you can't show it on TV. Over in the UK, they couldn't show it.
Who
So
defines
obviously the
art?
standards but the standards are muddy here. So, really, where does it
We
begin?
don't live in a black and white world, and so that man can have his topiary, and this man can have his naked Davids. And I agree that no one should be allowed to put up a swastika.
So
I
why
think
does it
there's
have
the
to
line.
be either or though? See,
That's what I'm saying.
It's a
It's
false
gray.
choice because you could, I think we've lost the ability to talk to each other and compromise. So, people put shit in their yard, cover it every Christmas, right? And people are subjected.
Excuse me,
Atheists.
snowman is not shit. Let's just
Okay,
throw
but
that
look,
out there.
Atheists are subjected to.
Okay, let's say I'm an atheist and I really don't like that giant Jesus bleeding on a cross in your yard every day. I
But,
don't like seeing it. I paid a lot of money for this house. I lived in this neighborhood before you did, and I don't want to see your damn bleeding, suffering
This is
Jesus.
my point, is that it's for 5 weeks of the year. Christians get their holiday.
Oh, Jesus' suffering is year-round for some Christians, believe me.
For sure, but hear me out on this. That if we talk to each other and we compromise as a community and said, I really dislike what you have in your yard because it's taking away my right to not look at it, like to go out in space and enjoy my own property. It's an eyesore, but for the sake of, making you happy, I would be happy. I would be fine with you having it there for 6 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever. Take it down. 6 weeks of the year, you can have
You're
it there.
more accommodating than a lot of
Yeah.
American neighbors, I gotta say, for the sake of making you happy. Look, the question is, what's more important in a free society? The right to do whatever you want with your apartment, or the right of a community to not be confronted with whatever you want to do?
But you find a compromise of, these are the people that are living there, these are the stakeholders, and you say, okay, what is workable for you? What is workable for you? And I think there is a middle ground that's not necessarily, yes,
Okay.
have marbleized penises everywhere, every 365, 24/7, or not at all.
Then
I
let me
think
play
that
the
you can meet in the middle.
let me play the easily offended trump card. What about the children? What about the children? I don't want my children to see this giant shrubbery moose penis you've made in your yard with a crucified Jesus and someone giving the finger and bukkake Smurf. I mean, whatever people do.
You really went there.
Well,
Bukkake Smurf.
but
you know.
they are gonna play the children
Right.
card, and the children card is always going to be opposed to the free speech card in this society. 100 years from now, they'll be having the same debate.
I mean, I can almost get. I mean, I don't know the court's decision, but I can almost guarantee that there probably was a suit about the naked Davids, because it is very in your face and arguably more than 12.
Yes.
It is just numerous
There's
Davids.
like 20
Yeah,
on that
it's
guy's
just
property. There's like 10 in like a
surrounding.
semicircle.
Yeah,
I mean,
around the
they're
driveway.
everywhere.
But we live in a society where our government tells mothers, our government spends money to put posters up telling mothers to breastfeed your child, and then that same government fines CBS for showing Janet Jackson's breast. Now,
I mean, we're full of hypocrisy.
is it hypocrisy or is
Yeah,
it just
of course.
Yeah.
I
cultural
think it's
schizophrenia?
Protestant shame.
Well, I would agree with that
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. But
We're the only
It's
animal that has
sex shaming.
hang-ups about that body part.
Yeah.
some people in this country can vote with their feet if they don't like the neighborhood. They don't, and they know. For example, if if you live in Venice, California, Venice Beach, it's known to be a funky place. You know what you're getting yourself into when you move there. There are things that are similar to the Davids all over the place there. And you know that that's not the neighborhood for you. Maybe you need to live in a, not everyone can do that, has that luxury. But in this particular instance, it looked like they were in a row apartments all the way down. And I mean, I can't imagine that their neighbors wouldn't maybe celebrate that, because that place looked dreary.
Well, I'm telling you, at some point in our lifetime, we're going to see a lawsuit over this, and I'm betting it's going to involve the Confederate flag. At some point, okay, and in my opinion, there's nothing more unpatriotic than flying the symbol of quitting America because you want to keep black folks as pets. All right, I'm half Southern. I love my Southern family, but the fact is,
don't mince words or anything.
I will not. It is the flag of an enemy nation. It's a symbol of quitting America because you think people should be livestock and you call it states' rights. And at some point, and again, if you like it, great, God bless, dig it. But the fact that people who dig the Confederate flag don't care how hurtful it is to black folks and lots of white folks too, and lots of people who love America, and the fact that the South has a lot more to be proud of in those 4 years when they went out for their lost weekend. I mean, that's like, that to me, the Confederate flag is like you break up with your wife and then you take up with some skank, you go broke, move back home and put the other bitch's picture over the fireplace. That's the Confederate flag. And at some point in our life, we will see a lawsuit brought over someone having this in their yard. Now, that's a lot more subtle to us than the swastika. Okay, let me just ask, would someone have a case?
Yeah, I think they. I mean, I think they would. I mean, I guess I was looking at this, you know, from the humor perspective and saying it's a topiary middle finger. But yeah, I mean, I would be offended, and if someone was flying the Confederate flag, and
you got to come down and see my family. It's all over the place.
Oh goodness.
Nashville.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm sure it's all over the place.
I'm half Virginian. And half Brooklyn,
Virginia.
Where they've made it an art form. Yes,
The left half is Brooklyn.
I'm a y'all and yous family.
There it is.
Well, we're almost out of time, and I've really enjoyed this. It's been great to be with this kind of a smart, attractive panel, and to talk about some fun stuff like the record industry and obscenity and regulation. Before we go, I'd like to get a final comment from each of you, and please tell us, Jackie, where we can find your stuff, how we can follow you.
Yeah, no, I would love that. As you mentioned before, it's a Tea Party Report is the name of the game.
It's very funny.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I'm deeply offended and I want you to stop.
Then by all means, I'll keep going.
Okay.
So you can find it at youtube.com/Tea Party Report. Very straight and simple. And the character I am Susie Sampson. So Twitter at Susie Sampson, or if you want to tweet at me at Jackie Koppel.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Lauren?
I produce articles, graphics, and video on my own website, ladylibertine.net. I'm on Twitter at ladylibertine27, and then also YouTube at Lauren Windsor 27.
Douglas?
I'd like to point out really quickly, though, my last point on the topiary. He said that middle finger was already sort of in the bush, and he just sort of brought it out. Yeah. People say that every day when they see the Jesus in a tortilla.
Yeah.
Well, Jesus was in a tortilla. So, you know, they said the truth.
There you go. So that's all I had to say about that.
There you go.
And how can we follow you? And find
you
your
can
new show?
Follow me on social media at D Caballero. It's Twitter. And look for me on the Young Turks Network, Music and Politics. The show will be on, and it will blow your mind.
One final music question. Does auto-tune suck, and is it hurting music?
I don't know. Let's ask T-Pain. T-Pain. Where's T-Pain? Is he in the room somewhere?
I mean, I think it's amazing that Chris Brown can both lip sync with autotune at the same time.
Yes.
But is autotune destroying the art of singing? Does it trivialize what good singers can do?
Yeah, I think ultimately it's not allowing the best of the best to soar. You have Jennifer Hudson, who's incredible. Then, well, you have a lot of other folks.
Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I mean, I think Adele is a prime example of that. You see someone that can just stand on a stage and deliver something amazing. The magnitude of what she can deliver just outshines all these girls that get up there and dance around in crazy bikinis. I mean,
Kesha does have a following, though.
Indeed, she does. What do you think?
Autotune.
Come on, you're the music guy.
Autotune is a tool. Okay,
Yeah.
It was first used with Cher, and no one wanted, the producers didn't want anyone to know that that's what they were doing. They wanted everyone to think it was a really cool, neat trick, but instead it was just a program. And it's just a tool, and it can be used for both good and for evil.
I think if auto-tune is allowed in music, steroids should be allowed in sports. And I do think as far as Adele goes, if you care about good music, you'll do everything you can to keep Adele from ever having a happy relationship. I'm John Fugelsang. I thank this wonderful panel for joining us. I thank you for watching The Point. Please subscribe, give us your comments below, and we will see you next time. You can follow me at johnfugelsang.com or on the Twitter. Have a great week.